this is a sign of damp proofing treatment. It obviously hasn't done any good, and nor should it, because it's not the root cause. It's in London. You don't get rising damp in London, and that's treatment against rising damp. So this is a classic example of why damp proofing doesn't work, indeed makes a property damper. So here we can see where the damp proofer's line is, and it's damp above that. And likewise here, see the disruption, and what's happening is this is impermeable down here. Damp proofers will have replaced the normal plaster with slurry, impermeable slurry. They probably call it something else nowadays, but anyway, that's what it is. What happens is it stops moisture being absorbed, so it forces the moisture in the air to be absorbed elsewhere, and it will collect behind the damp proofing slurry. It's like a big tank, if you like, and the water is in the plaster above, and it causes calcium sulfate salts to disrupt the line of above the interface between the slurry and the normal plaster, and that's what's happening here. You can see the damp is lining up along the slurry. The neighbour asked me whether it should be removed, and yes, in an ideal world you go back to the normal plaster. It's going to be seen as being a little bit like the cavity wall insulation scandal. It is a scandal, and it's ripping the country off. There's a dehumidifier, or there's these little things. They don't really do much good. You can see they can't collect any more moisture in the air than, well, you can see that actually the water's up to that level, so it's doing virtually nothing. It feels very humid in here. I'm going to show you what I have in the bag at another time. In fact, before I set out to do this survey. But I'm going to, actually I've got one of these in my pocket already, and you'll see the internal dew point is showing 11.3. To be fair, it has been in my pocket, so it may take a while to adjust. Temperature's 16.8. I always ask the occupiers to put data loggers in the property a week before I come for a survey, so I can collect data and we can see the improvements before and afterwards, and then obviously longer term. But the idea is to bring the dew point, 11.2 dew point, down below the outside temperature. The temperature today is about 6 degrees centigrade, so we're way above it, and that's why you're getting condensation in these zones, specifically not on the damp proofed area. Yeah, you might say, well, that's wonderful, but it's like painting plastic onto the wall. It stops it breathing, it just moves the vapour elsewhere. If we look behind the shutters, we've got condensation there, we've got mould, so it's just moving it elsewhere, causing problems elsewhere, and one day somebody's going to be sued a lot of money, and perhaps we'll stop recommending rising damp treatment when there's no rising damp. You don't have it in London anyway, because the groundwater's pumped out, so you can't have rising damp in London. Shutters, in my opinion, are worse than curtains. Curtains and shutters and any objects up against a cold wall, or in this case glass, what it will do is it will cause the vapour will come in through diffusion and then get blocked in from behind. So you're not getting the heat from the radiator, which is over here. Instead, it's diffusing, but it's not getting the benefit of the heat, and it's causing long-term stable conditions that are ideal for mould growth. You want to take the mould off. Mould is unlikely to be causing your child allergies. However, I'm not a doctor, but it's the conditions that you have high humidity, and it certainly feels very humid in this room. I've had the door open, but the relative humidity, well, it says 60%, but when I opened up I would say it was probably more like 70%, and the surface relative humidity here would have been around 85%. We'll have a look in the thermal imaging camera now. So here we go, looking through a thermal imaging camera, and I'll show you that now. You get greater heat loss where there's damp proofing treatment because the solid wall is a poor insulator. Having said that, a damp wall is a even worse insulator, so I suppose arguably you could say that it's better to have a dry wall, but then you're not dealing with the root cause. So you get a lot of heat loss around here, which is why you tend to get dampened bays. Also it's cluttered, stopping airflow from radiators. There's a bit of dampness down there, and it's cold at the base of the wall there. I think if we start to call these dryness meters, there may be a bigger uptake amongst the independent damp community. You can see it appears to be dry. Look at the mould down there, which you only get mould where you get excess vapour. It's damp to above the damp proof slurry, and then it's dry down there. Or it's drier, but that's because the slurry is hiding damp. It's not dealing with it. So I could be wrong, but this light doesn't seem to come on. And I'm guessing what is happening is the shower's being left, doors being left open because of that. There's a manual extractor fan, which is not great. It's this. Okay, I'll test it out now. But if it's manual, people are going to turn it on and off as they start the shower. It should be left on for half an hour after having a shower, because about 90% of the vapour remains in the shower after you turn the lights out. So it's running about 7.7 litres per second, about half what it should be. Have a look on the outside as well. If you can't afford an anemometer, what you can do is just put it up neatly around this. You can see this box has been damaged over time, and you can see that it will stay quite still, unsupported. So the kitchen extractor fan is not ducted out. There's nothing above. If you look at the fan itself, above it, it's just coming out here. So it's just recycling. Doesn't really perform any function. There's dampness around here, around the doorway. Let's go outside and have a look at the extractor fan outlet. So you can see the flaps are hardly opening at all. So there's growth of plants there and there, and you can see that this, we'll have a look. Oh, it's, the neighbour is definitely growing a large amount there. I don't know about you yourself, but I think it's overflowing the gutter coming down here, and that's why you're getting that. So there's an element of penetrating damp as well as condensation. We know there's condensation because of the mould, or we know that there's excess vapour because of the mould. The air brick is fairly blocked up, should be unblocked, and ideally should allow some airflow around there, i.e. not have the bicycles in the way. That's a bit blocked there as well. I'll have a look in the cellar in a sec. Oh, there's a lot of plants up there, so the gutters need to be cleaned up anyway. So you might as well just do all of them. I'm going to guess that there's an issue here. So this is in the cellar area, but there's no real access. It's not ideal, but you know, I guess it works. But just be careful with the subfloor ventilation. Open up those air bricks. This feels damp as well. But there's no ventilation from the kitchen, so it's not really surprising. Yeah, unusually dry. It's damp on the side because the curtain is blocking the vapour against the cold wall, getting condensation there. There's, well, maybe a bit of airflow there. That's rotted. It feels just like window rot. It just needs to be filled out with 2-pack. There's rot on the outside here. Window rot, I believe. You want to keep the door closed for a majority of the time, obviously, except coming and going. So obviously drying clothes internally needs a dehumidifier, and plants, you have to respect that all the water put into plants comes out as vapour. So obviously the plants are generating vapour, all the water you put in comes out as vapour, and drying clothes needs a dehumidifier. I'll put some recommendations in. The wall's dry here, but that's probably because it's been damp-proofed. This room actually feels drier. So there's overlay flooring, which reduces the amount of airflow, as carpet would do as well. But you just have to be aware that it's fairly blocked up, and I'll check in the front. There's a dehumidifier, but it's only 12 litres. You need to have a 20 litre one. Double glazing without any trickle vents as well. The internal dew point is now 10.6. If we take it outside, the internal temperature is 19.8. If we take it outside, it'll be interesting. It's a relatively mild day today, but it'll help understand what's happening. There you go. It'll take a few minutes to acclimatise. So the dew point is dropping, the temperature is dropping, relative humidity. Damp.ai/detect, where you can upload all your files, which I have got for you here. And we can upload all 3 of them at the same time. And then you can select from this the source that you want to look at, the damp wall you want to look at, and compare it to the source. So in this case, it's the bathroom. We know that the temperature was around 13 degrees centigrade on the damp wall at the time of the survey, which was... So for some reason, if we look at the data on the data logger, this was from 2025-01-24 in the second bedroom. These are all 24, so actually we don't have a lot of data. So it then becomes a bit imprecise, but it will give you good information. So let's estimate a 15 degree. In some respects, this will just give you some ideas how to use this graph, because ultimately it's for every person that occupies a property to use it, to understand their data. And what it's showing is the surface relative humidity. Now that's based on the temperature, which I don't have, so I'm guessing that, but the temperature at the time of the data logger was taken, and this green line shows the surface relative humidity. Now the important line is this dew point line, and that tells me the amount of vapor in the property expressed as a dew point, as a degree centigrade, and it should be below this line here, which is the external temperature. And in a perfectly ventilated property, this line would be the same level as the external vapor level, which is this dew point line here. Now, you don't want to be overly ventilated, but at the same time, it's important to recognize that if you've got high vapor levels, then you have a risk of mold and condensation. This line here is what's called the dew point differential, and it's the difference between the internal vapor and the bathroom vapor in this case. So where you have spikes there, it's because there's a sudden increase in the bathroom vapor, and this can translate into vapor in the bedrooms if you keep the bathroom door open, for example. So there seems to be a lot of vapor in the bedroom relative to the bathroom, which can be a number of issues. It could be to do with drying clothes internally. I mean, obviously, respiration has an effect, but and people will say, well, some of the penetrating damp might have some effect, but actually, it's marginal. It's probably less than a very small t-shirt drying. Even that, I would say, is more than you would get from that wall. So after the midday, the 24th, the vapor is going down in the bedroom. So something worthwhile is taking place there. But even so, you want to increase the extraction of vapor and use a dehumidifier, and to drop that line below the outside temperature at all times. And then you'll solve all your condensation and mold. In the meantime, you should remove mold using an anti-mold spray, and obviously run the dehumidifier and use the bathroom extractor fan. Cook with tops on pots and pans, all the good things you'll see in the description below.